Hi folks, love to everybody out there, God bless you. My website's jasonburnspreacher.com. You can get me on Facebook and Twitter, etc. It's lovely to be with you, and love to everybody out there. I just want to ask some questions really, and I'm quite concerned about certain issues that need to be addressed. Number one, the issue of free speech. Apparently today Sarah, a debater down at Hyde Park, has announced that his Twitter has been banned for 6 days. And I think that this kind of behaviour by the powers that be, where they're censoring free speech, i.e. that free speech that stands up against the encroachments of Islam, the silencing of that free speech is, I think, out of order. And I think it's out of order for silencing Sarah. Now, Sarah's been a vocal critic of Islam, and I think it's legitimate. He has very cogent, highly logical arguments against Islam, and he's been a ferocious opponent against Islam on an intellectual level. So for him to be banned from Twitter for 6 days, and possibly might happen in the future for longer, I think is totally unacceptable and totally unreasonable. I don't agree with people who just pick on Muslims for the sake of picking on Muslims. I'm not into that. I don't agree with that. I think I love Muslim people. Muslim people are great people. So, sorry, I'm not into that. But I do think it's right. I do think it's fair to critique Islam. And it's not Islamophobia. The fact of the matter is that wherever Islam comes, Islam is a theocracy, and Islam will come and take over politically. That's just a fact. It's not Islamophobia. Sharia law is a fact. Sharia law is creeping in the country. It's a fact. The left in this country, without realizing it, have completely given over the reign to Islam, and in the future they will give Islam carte blanche to rule this country. That's a fact. That's what's going to happen in the next 10-20 years. Our government has sold us out on this issue, and it's just a fact. So it's not Islamophobia, it's not racism, it's not a reason to ban people just because they oppose Islam. Now, there are some narrow-minded and bigoted people on every camp, every walk of life. And there are some narrow-minded, bigoted people who kind of using this critique of Islam just to get at Muslims. And I don't applaud that. I totally, absolutely denounce that. I have absolutely no time for anybody whatsoever who would treat any Muslim or any person disrespectfully. No time for it whatsoever. But, and I repeat, but, the establishment has to get it into its head that you cannot run from this debate. And the question is, what is the role of Islam in our Western civilization? What is the role of Islam in our culture today in the UK? And the British establishment can try to silence Sarah, silence Paul Golding and Britain First, can try to silence these people, but at the end of the day, that question will keep coming home and harder and harder and harder, and you'll never ever get rid of it. Never. Okay? Because it's a legitimate question to ask. Now, I've got a leaflet here of people who are going to be protesting against the FLA, Football Lads Alliance, and this leaflet saying that they're racist. It says, we, the undesigned, are opposed to the Football Lads Alliance plans to demonstrate in Manchester. The FLA claimed to be against all extremism, but in recent months it has had far-right speakers. Far-right speakers? You mean people who would oppose Islam? I don't agree with everything these people say. I don't agree with everything they say. I don't agree with everything Paul Golding said, or Britain First said. I don't agree with everything Tommy Robinson says. I don't agree with everything the Football Lads Alliance say, but they're not extremists, they're not far right, they're not racist, they're just ordinary people who've woken up to the fact that our country's melting, collapsing before our very eyes, and that within the next 10, 20 years we're going to be ruled by Sharia law. That's where it's at. So it's not about racism. It's about at least a group of people have woken up to the fact of where the nation's going. The nation is going to oblivion. Okay? And I'll be straight with you. We're heading for civil war. Whether anybody likes it or not, whether the establishment silences Sarah or not, whether the establishment silences Tommy Robinson or not, we're heading for civil war. I don't want civil war. I don't believe in civil war. But the way you're conducting yourselves as the establishment, where you're silencing Sarah and you're silencing everybody else, then you're just going to reconfirm or reaffirm the narrative that it's all right for Islam, but it's not all right for anybody else who opposes them. And you are actually perpetuating the narrative of the conflict. So, Twitter, you need to wake up. You need to just let people have the free speech. The government needs to wake up. You need to let people have freedom of speech. The only way you can defeat your enemy is by reason and evidence, not by silencing them. People can go underground, they can go on WhatsApp, they can go any other way. So you can't silence them. We're heading for civil war. And the only way to avert it is to build communities based on discussion and debate and trying to understand each other, trying to support each other, try to work together, and try to ask the question, what is the role of Islam in our Western civilization? And unfortunately, the question, when answered, is not a good answer. It's not going to be well for our civilization in the next 10 to 20 years, and that's a fact. So it's not hate mongering, it's not Islamophobia, that's the way it is. So silencing Sarah, silencing Paul Golding, silencing Tommy Robinson, silencing these people is just not the way to go about it. Like I said, I don't agree with everything these people say, but I agree that they have a right to stand up against Islam politically. They have a right to do that. I don't agree with the way they do it sometimes. I don't agree with some of the things they say. But the Football Lads Alliance, they have a right to their free speech. They have a right to make a stand against Islam. They can see that in 20 years' time, we're going to be a caliphate. They can see that. That's not racism. That's not Islamophobia. You can knock on my door, police. You can knock on my door as the government. It is not Islamophobia. It is not Islamophobia. It's the fact that Islam is a theocracy and that it has to implement Sharia law. So wherever you get Islam, there's going to be conflict because people will say, we don't want to come under Sharia law. And you've been irresponsible as the establishment to allow this to happen in our Western civilization. You've been totally irresponsible, and you've completely ignored the working class communities in England. And now things are beginning to ferment, and you're getting scared, and you're trying to silence people's free speech. So this video basically is saying, what I'm trying to say is this: the juggernaut of Islam is coming your way in our West. And there ain't no way you're going to be able to deal with it, whether establishment or Tommy Robinson. It's coming, and civil war's coming to the UK. And the only way civil war will be stopped in this country is if this nation gets on its knees and repents, reads the Bible, and comes to know Jesus as Saviour, and comes to know the God of John Newton, the God of William Wilberforce, the God of the Fox's Book of Martyrs. Read Pilgrim's Progress by John Bunyan. Read the Fox's Book of Martyrs until you find the true and living God and come back to Him. This nation is coming for civil war in the next 10 to 20 years.